Today I'm going to give a high-level overview of using Access and Power BI. I know I'd spoken to Dale, and initially there were some connectivity challenges with Access and Power BI, but that's been worked out, except with one wrinkle, and I'll talk to you about that. My company HarborView focuses on providing analytics to pharmaceutical and medical device companies using Power BI. I have a process that, let me get rid of the timing here, sorry about that. There we go. I have a process that's technology neutral in terms of designing data warehouses and analytics, but by far the tool that I'm most comfortable with and that in my perspective is the best tool out there is Power BI. I started out on the business side of the business, building Access databases for a quality group, so Access is near and dear to my heart. I was with a biotech company in California that was acquired by a large pharmaceutical company. During the due diligence, the folks from that company saw the databases, saw how we ran the department, and I was asked to become head technical operations of the global supply chain group because of that. The company just didn't have any systems like we had, and that speaks to Access and what a great tool Access can be when it's used properly. So again, near and dear to my heart. We now provide the analytics based on Power BI. And so why Power BI? Why talk to the Access developers about that? Well, from my perspective, I built a business on analytics, but for Access developers, I believe there's a significant aftermarket for upgrading your existing client systems to include dynamic reports built in Power BI. Part of the demo I'll show you is using the Northwind, the classic Northwind database, and the type of information we can extract out of that. And I think given your awareness of the design of the client systems, you're uniquely positioned to help them start that path. Power BI is a low-cost Microsoft product, so it's in the Microsoft stack. And as I'll show you from a report by the Gartner Group, Power BI is just leading the charge in bringing down the price of these analytics systems. Typically, before Power BI, it was out of reach for small business. A lot of small businesses run their business on Access with QuickBooks and those type of tools, and these type of business analytics just weren't affordable for them. And from my perspective, this is, even though my market space is pharma and large pharma, for general small business, again, it's an opportunity to introduce analytics in a way that small businesses just haven't had before. And then I'll show you a chart with Google Trends just showing how the implementation of Power BI, how that awareness is increasing. So as I mentioned, Power BI is $9.99 a month, although there's a free version. What Power BI is, there's the Power BI desktop that I'll provide a link for those that don't have it. And you can go ahead and download this desktop. And that's the authoring environment. That's the primary authoring environment to build out these reports. You can then publish Power BI up to the Power BI service, which is a web-based framework that you can log into reports, and I'll show you, you can just access everything through a browser. The link I gave you is part of a web publish feature, which allows you to publish non-confidential information that you don't mind sharing with the public. But when you implement these reports for your clients, you're using the security stack, the Active Directory or the Azure security stacks. There's a password and there's accounts and things like that. It's free if you want to publish to your own personal workspace, but if you want to collaborate and share across accounts in your organization, that's the $9.99 a month. Now there are enterprise levels coming out, Microsoft. That one of the things I find fascinating about Power BI is it's built for self-service analysis for an individual or for a small group, but they're aggressively moving into the enterprise domain as well. More and more large companies are building their enterprise reporting framework around Power BI, and there's some offerings called Premium up at that level. The nice thing is when you publish to the Power BI service, you can also access those reports on mobile apps for Android or for the iPhone or for the iPad. And again, that's very, very nice feature as well. So I talked about this Gartner report. Gartner is a marketing group that does analysis of technology segments in various industries and across platforms and tool sets. They publish what they call this magic quadrant, which you want to be in the upper right-hand corner. And this analysis advises buying decisions for many large organizations. This is the most recent, and as you can see, Microsoft is tied with Tableau in terms of ability to execute, but the furthest to the right in completeness of vision. You can Google and find this report and download it. I gave some summary, but there's much more detailed analysis in the report you can access. And again, one of the reasons that distinguishes, one of the things that distinguishes Power BI is that price point. It's pretty amazing, and again, opens it up to small business. The result of all that is, I don't know if you're familiar with Google Trends, but Google Trends is a good way to kind of gauge integration of technologies, market awareness, things like that. And you can see Power BI was released back in 2015. Access, the blue line, is a very mature product, so no slam on that, and it's holding steady, maybe a slight decline over the past few years. But you can just see where Power BI is taking off. So as developers, as folks in the database and the reporting space, again, it's just something to be aware of, in that it looks like the opportunities just going to be increasing, and you can take your knowledge out of the access realm and start to deliver solutions and perhaps expand your service into other analytics, into more of an integration rather than development. So I'm going to use the classic and the old version in Northwind as the demo. Most of us who grew up using Access are familiar with it. There's a newer version you can download if you want to familiarize yourself. It's used as a template now. But this speaks to, even though these images are a little bit dated, but the idea of static reports. Typically what you get out of a database are these static reports that can give you some graphics. Now I know Access has much improved charting capability now. And no takeaway from that. There's a great opportunity to use that in these traditional reports or in the traditional forms. But again, from my perspective, my view of Power BI or these analytics tools is they sit on top of all systems. In my industry, more and more systems, material management systems, quality management systems, deviation management systems, they're getting very sophisticated reporting built into their system, just like Access now has charts in its system. But from my perspective, and what I advise my clients, is the real opportunity is to have something that sits on top of all these systems, all these silos of information, and use its capability to integrate information across all these systems. And so again, that's a different approach than having the great charting capabilities in Access. I now tend to think of any database, any Excel spreadsheet, any web page with a table on it. These are all just buckets of information, and a tool like Power BI can let you connect to those buckets and pull the information out and then report on integrated information with a dynamic report. And so I don't know if any of you had a chance to, I'd send out a link to the demo report I build using the Northwinds database, just to illustrate the capabilities I'm talking about. So this link, Dale can send you this link. We can post this link on the user group site. But again, this is running in a browser. This is a very simple one-page report. Before I go into it, I'm going to go back to the standardized reports. And so, for example, here's the one with confections. If I click on confections, I can see In the demo report, it's filtered on confections, and I can see my confection sales in a chart. And you can see here, I've selected my confections, and I can see the sales out of Northwind, and it matches the static report. But you can see it's just an example of the difference of how dynamic one of a Power BI report is. And I can click, and I can see the values for 1996, and I can control click and see more than one item. I can sort this, and it's just a much more, from my perspective, informative use of the data than just a static report. And then the same with the inventory. So here I can see my units in stock. Here I can see my units in stock. And again, much more dynamic. Okay.
Let me interrupt here just a second. Does anybody
Sure.
have any questions so far? All right, Richard, please go ahead.
You bet. So here's an example dashboard I built just if you were the sales manager of Northwind, and you wanted to use that data that's in the database for sales. So you can see across the top, I have my summaries, total sales, number of orders. I see the map. I can click on a region. Now, these regions aren't in the Northwind database. I created an Excel table with the way the regions are defined, and a list of countries and which of these three region the country is that's on the customer in the Northwind database. But so now I can just filter by my regions, get a high level view. I can filter by year. I can, these are what are called tooltip reports. I can just hover over country and see the sales trend for that country. Or I can come up, and one of the things Access has is its due date and actual ship date, so I can see which of my shippers are meeting their agreed date or which ones are behind. So I can see in Brazil, federal shippings had two late orders. So it's a nice way to quickly get a sense, because one of the best ways to lose a customer is to get them their goods late. So you may be interested in that. I can, again, see my trend, my sales broken out by category. Here I can see a trend in a region. So it's just examples of how you can pull up different information at a glance. One of the things I like, those of us who've worked with Northwind, you've got the classic employee information. And again, rather than have to go to the database, you can pull the information up right in Power BI. I'm working on a project with Genentech, their global external supply group. I'm building for them actually an Access database to consolidate a lot of the spreadsheets and the information they manage, and then we're going to deploy a Power BI tool set pulling the data out of that Access database. And one of the things we've done again is we're building that Access database so that no one except people that do data entry have to go into that database. All the other information is going to come out of the Power BI report. And so here's an example of how that employee details screen in Northwind, you can replicate that in a tool like this. So again, from my perspective, there's just no comparison to what you can do with this type of a tool than what you can do with reporting in any of these database systems. I don't have it set up, but you can right click. You can also build a drill down where I can right click. In addition to the tooltip that just comes up when I hover, I can drill down and get to a whole nother page filtered for that salesperson or filtered for that product that can have a whole different set of information now filtered and associated with that item I'm drilling down on. So that drill down capability is also very powerful. So at this point, I'll ask, does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
I'll start out. The region and year filters at the top. So those are in fact filters. So can you filter on more than one of those at a time?
Yep, I can I
And when
can
they're
control. Yep, I can control click,
okay, and when
and
they're not
there.
select, and when there's nothing selected, it just includes all of them.
Exactly. Although
Okay.
you can change all that behavior, but that's the default. So again, if I just clicked on Europe and LATAC on my map, I'm just showing the countries in Latin America or in Europe.
And all the data that's displayed is distinct to those countries that are in those two regions.
Exactly. Or again, I can click on a country and then further filter just on Brazil, just on Germany, and I can see what percentage. Most of the filters I have, when you select, it completely filters the information, but under sales by region, you can see I'm just highlighting the portion of European sales that Germany contributes. So the total sales are 760,000 for the 3 years, and if I click, it gives you a percentage of what those sales were. So you can display the information either as a filter or a highlighting.
Okay, so when you filtered by country, that was actually selecting, clicking on the country in the map, or was that clicking on the country on the
Yep.
sales region area?
So it's all interactive. So here I clicked on the region up top, and that just gave me my countries in Europe. And if I just want to filter for a country, I can filter by clicking on the bar. That filters just for that country. And here you can see when I click on this bar chart, it only highlights, I'd like to see for Germany, out of all the dairy products sold in Europe, what are the dollars contributed by Germany. So this is an example under sales by category of highlighting. Whereas if I click on Germany in the map, I filter everything down and then I rank it by the highest. So you can see I'm getting two types of information. One, when I click on the map, it's just giving me sales by category, just the sales for that country. Whereas if I click on that country in the chart, it's giving me those numbers, but it's showing it in the context of the total sales for dairy products in Europe. So again, depending on what information you're looking to share. They used to call business intelligence systems decision support systems. And that's really how I think of these when I build for my clients. I look to understand, one, what reporting they have to do on a routine basis and automate that, make that very simple for them. But two, what decisions do they make in the course of their business? What business processes can I help them with by giving them the information they would need to make a decision? So again, if I hover over my best customer, I can see he's declining a little bit, and I had some late deliveries early. Whereas this guy, I see there's a decline. This guy, one of these has some recent issues. Yeah, there. So you can see this client, one, their sales have trended down, and two, we've delivered late to them. So I want to investigate that. I don't want to lose that customer. So part of the decisions are, how are my suppliers doing? Are they meeting their delivery dates? What do I need to do to keep this customer happy? Is this customer spending going up, or is this customer spending going down? And so that's the type of information I would do. And I can, by clicking on this guy, I can see which of my salespeople are interacting with that customer. And in this case, Andrew's doing well, but I can see some of these other folks aren't selling much to that customer, and I can talk to them about that. Anything else?
That's great. Can you show us how we get started?
You bet. So I'm going to show you how you would build a simple report by drag and dropping. And so if I open up, So basically, I'm going to create a new page. Here I have my visuals, the different types of visuals I can use. Here I have, and I'll come back to this, expand all. Here are the fields I have that I can do my analysis on. My facts are those things, if you're familiar with an Excel pivot table, those are the things that get calculated. So I could say, I want to look at average days to ship. And I want to do this in my regions. And I'm going to turn this into a, let me look at my cheat sheet here. And I'm going to choose shipper. And so here I can see, and then I'm also going to bring over, I can copy my year. Come over. And so I can click on a year, and I can see in Europe, I've had my average days to ship are 10.3 in Europe for a United package, and they ship 6.8 in Latin America. So I can just get a sense of if I'm making a decision on who to use as a shipper. I can do the same with late orders. I can do very quick ad hoc analysis. And one of the things I want to show, and I'm going to come back to this, is very important, how simple this field structure is. That doesn't happen out of the box. What happens, and I'll go ahead and I'll show you how we can connect to that Access database. Basically, I'll go into Power BI, I'll click Get Data, and I'll make this slide deck available so you have it as a reference. And you can see Access Database comes up as a choice. I click that. I can choose the tables that I want to import. And then that information comes in. And so I will do that with, I'll open up a new instance of Power BI.
So while that's opening, you said you select that for access to import. Does that really mean import? Is that? Or, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
When I forgot to move my mic down. When you said you'd import, does that specifically mean import, or are you actually linking to the data? Because I've got a client who uses a program called Spotfire, which basically imports the data, and they have to do a refresh of their data every time they want to do new reports, rather than having a constant link to the data.
Yeah. So there are a few ways to work with the data. The most typical is the import. And one of the things that is great with Power BI, especially using a OneDrive framework with Office 365, or you can get what's called a gateway for your data that's on-premise, data in the cloud. You can set up these automatic refresh schedules up to 8 times a day, or at any point, the person that's entered data can just hit refresh, or you can hit refresh on the Power BI side and import that data in. So the typical framework is to import that data. There are, however, connectivity called direct query, and those direct queries are an actual link to the database. So you can do direct query with Azure, you can direct query with SQL. I don't think you can do direct query with Access. But so there is an option for a link, a live link, and there are advantages there because the query structure and the query optimization, that's all done on the data side, not on the Power BI side. So if you really move into this, there are a number of ways that you can connect to the data. So I brought these tables in, and if I expand, unlike what I had before, you can see that the information that comes in is exactly the information that are in the tables is defined in Access. And if I look at the relationship, Power BI is smart enough, if you turn it on, to actually build the relationships to the data tables that are in the database. Thing is, these tables are optimized for transactions. They're highly normalized. There are multiple layers of the information. And that's tricky for a user, if you bring in that data, to now try to drag and drop and build a report because the relationships aren't optimized for analysis. You can see I have in Northwind, I have an orders table, plus I have an order detail table, and I would like to merge those into a sales table where I have that information all in one place. And so that's a challenge with just directly importing the data. And so one of the things you do when you do analytics development is you take that transactional schema and you bring that. And again, you can see that transactional schema in Power BI. It mirrors what's in, if I go to the relationship diagram in Access, that's my Northwind ERD. But what you want to do is you want to change that to what's called a dimensional model or star schema when you build a data mart or a data warehouse. And the dimensional model is comprised of a fact table. The fact table are just the transactions, just the things that you're going to want to turn into what are called measures, the number of orders, the average days late, the percent change in sales. And so those are what are called facts. And you take that combined fact table, and then you build out those actual measures, which is what you want to drag and drop, and you want to see the number of salespeople, you want to see the number of sales in the U.S. And so that's your fact table. You also build what are called dimensions, and those are all the things, the who, who had the highest sales, which shipper had the most late days, what product had the most sales, where in which country or which region, when did those sales take place? So you can filter it by year, you can see trends over time, days, months, and then customer who bought those products. And those are what are called your dimension tables. And that's literally the schema that you build in Power BI in the data mart. So you only have your foreign keys in your fact table. And then, so your fact table tends to be skinny, but lots of transactions. Power BI can literally handle billions of transactions at enterprise scale. So anything that you would build, I'm sure it can handle it for you. Your dimension tables are denormalized. They're very wide, so you can see in country, I have country and region. I don't have that broken out with two different tables. With product, I have product category, supplier, units in stock, all of that, all the information I want to know about product is in a very denormalized product table. And so that's the different way of thinking if you're going to use these tools to build systems out. You want to, for yourself, all the calculations, all the things you want to build are facilitated by this star schema, this dimensional model approach. You can build out a model using the transactions, but it just doesn't work. In my industry, and in many industries, the reason analytics and business intelligence hasn't taken root is the developers don't understand how to do this dimensional modeling, and I'll come back to references in the back. So a typical BI process isn't just the fancy charts that you have on the right connected to the raw data. There's what's called extract, transform, and load, ETL is the real process, where you extract the information from the source data. And the example I gave, again, most of the information came from Access, the North Winds, but I also have a table that defines new regions and countries, and that's what I bring in into the country table. But you can have lots of data sources, and that's the powerful functionality of these business tools is you can integrate data across. Your models can be more complex, so this is a simple model with one fact table, but you can have multiple fact tables, and you can get a very complex dimensional model, but that's structured for your report. And then again, once you extract that data, so it's in the form that's in the database, then you transform it by using almost the set of macro tools that you point and click within Power BI or within the tool you use. And then you only choose those tables that are specific to the report, and then you load those, and then that's what gets published in your visualization layer. So there's a lot of tools like Spotfire and Tableau don't have the ability to do everything from the back, to extract the data, to transform the data, and to load the data. Power BI is unique in that it has all of that capability. A lot of tools can just sit on top of a dimensional model, and you need other software to do the transform or other software to do the extract. So just from a learning experience and a deployment experience, to have everything together under one roof in Power BI is very powerful. The language that you use to do the transformation, the extraction, the transformation, and the load is something called Power Query. And again, I'll give you references on that. The language used to build the calculated items that you would want, number of countries, so that you can just drag and drop a region, drag a customer, and then drag number of suppliers, boom. That's called DAX. You build those measures. So there's a DAX equation for number of countries, a DAX equation for number of customers. And so then shifting to training, all these links work. So one of the things Microsoft has done, they've provided a lot of great information on learning. So there's this guided learning environment that you can link, and I only gave you a small subset of all the information that's in there, and so that's a great resource. I mentioned connecting to the Microsoft Access database, the one wrinkle. So you need the redistributable engine of Access to installed to actually make that connection as easy as I showed you. So there's a nice link on the Microsoft site that talks about that. If you run into any trouble or have any questions, feel free to contact me, but I can help you with that. The dimensional modeling aspect, there are two great books that are my go-to books. These are links to Amazon that you can look and explore that. Then also there are two books on Power Query, which is the data shaping from the transactional model to the dimensional model. There's a great book on DAX that walks you through how to build those queries. For me, Power Query was very simple. The interface is point and click, so you can get by without knowing a lot of the language. And then when you want to really take it to the next level, you want to learn about the language. And so Power Query, these books will help you with that. DAX, on the other hand, was non-intuitive for me. DAX is a different way of thinking. And all I can say is when you start to work with it, you'll see what I'm saying. That's probably the biggest challenge. There are a lot of implicit calculations that take place. So if you just drag a field, Power BI is smart enough to say, do I want to do a count? Do I want to do a distinct count? Do I want to do an average? And then it'll give you choices that you can just do that first level implicit calculation. But to build reports with any sophistication, it's kind of like Access and VBA. You can build a lot of things in Access without VBA, but to go to the next level, you need that VBA. Same with DAX. And then finally, I've seen tons of ugly reports out there. And there are a few books out there. There's a guy named Stephen Few who really talks about elegant report design, how to do layouts, how to choose colors. And again, what comes out of the box Tableau gives you much more sophisticated visuals. Power BI kind of gives you kindergarten crayon color visuals, but you can build what are called themes that kind of default everything to a nice palette, to a nice design. And the guided learning will tell you how to set up a theme. This report design book will kind of give you, unless you're naturally gifted in art, he'll walk you through some of the better options for report design. And so in summary, I think it's a significant opportunity for developers to add real value to their existing client systems, and for you, the developer, generate revenue by mining that aftermarket. And so that's all I had. I hope it was helpful. And for me, again, I love it. I built my business around it. So any questions, comments?
I appreciate it, Richard. I've been playing with Power BI. Like I mentioned during our discussion yesterday and before the meeting started this morning, I have a lot of clients, most of whom are happy with text reporting because of the types of stuff they do, but the ability to graphically display data, I have a couple of oil and gas company clients who I think would be very interested in being able to see their data displayed on a map, depicting where their wells are, what their production is, that kind of thing. And being able to click on it and drill down on it would be very helpful.
Yeah, here's a nice little demo I use to show the value of visualization rather than just text data. So here's 4 data sets as tables. And when you look at that, for me, nothing really jumps out around that. And I can even do a statistical analysis on those 4 data sets in terms of the average, the standard deviation. And each of the data sets are identical. The X value is average to 9, Y value is 7.5. It's only when you get to visualization that I can see this is my distribution for the numbers in A. There's those in B, those in C, and those in D. So each of those data sets have vastly different information contained in them, but text just doesn't do it for me. And this is a very simple, but I think elegant example of the power of visualization.
Richard, this is Susan. I have a question. On the dashboard that you showed us at the beginning, when you hovered over the map, you got another pop-up chart. How did you get that to show rather than the tooltips standard?
Yep. So recently they introduced the ability, so I basically just come in, I would build a standard page with a chart, but then I say that page is a tooltip report. So I turn it on. So sales by product shows up as a tooltip now. It's an option. And so I have a few pages set up that way, configured as tooltips. So if I go to my salesperson details, so this, again, without filter, it doesn't really look like much, but it's configured as a tooltip, the salesperson details. And now when I go to my visual in this area here, I go to format, I go to tooltip, I turn it on. I can either have it be the default normal tooltip, or I can make the tooltip a report page, and then I pick my page, and then that just pops up. So it's pretty easy.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
It's handy to know.
Yep. Yeah, it's very powerful. And again, when I think of Northwind versus this, how elegant is that employee details just pop right up. I love that.
That's really good. Thank you.
You bet.
So, George, I see you're with us now. You said you love Power BI. What you have any clients that you use it for? It doesn't look like he's with us audio. So he
Did
says,
that discussion on dimensional modeling help or make sense and give you a way of thinking differently about how you would use a tool like this?
I have at one point many years ago I played with data warehousing and the concept of building a dimensional model, the star schema, and it's been a long time since I've had the chance to look at that. So it was not a piece that I realized that needed to be basically a middle tier to this process of my relational data, presenting it in a graphic mode. I did not realize that piece of it existed. So that's important for me. I'm going to have to do some digging and play with that some.
The Kimball book is great. Intuitively, do you see the logic, though, of just dragging and dropping the who's or the category? I want to see number of countries that I have clients for each category. It's just drag and drop. Whereas if you try to do that with the transactional model, boy, that gets complicated real fast.
And that's probably why when I first toyed with it, I was having difficulty getting Power BI to do what I wanted it to do.
Exactly.
It was trying to intuitively discern what I wanted when I would drag relational model fields into the mix, and that didn't work the way I had hoped it would. So I've got to go back to the drawing board and do some reading on dimensional modeling, and then figure out. Look at Power BI and go through some of the tutorials that you were describing,
yep.
and see how they do that.
Yep, it is night and day, and it's this book here. So the first book, Data Warehouse, is written by the guy Kimball who came up with the concept back in the 90s. But it's a classic book, and it's as meaningful as ever, and it kind of teaches you the abstraction about dimensional modeling. The second book is geared for Power BI. It's more the nuts and bolts of building a dimensional model using Power BI and building the DAX on top of that. And it's an amazingly useful book and helped me take my knowledge to the next level. And without that dimensional modeling layer, like many people in my business, many companies in my business, the IT folks don't understand the need for that, and they look to roll out these warehouses, to roll out these analytics tools, and it's doomed to failure because it's unsustainable to link directly with the transactional data. You need this dimensional model, and it's amazing that it's a lost art that's now coming back, but boy, it's critical. And so I'm sorry I took up some time with that, but if anybody's serious about building their business around this and more than just playing with it, you need that aspect.
I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else have any other questions? Does anybody else that's present used Power BI at all?
Not in its current form. We actually explored it with the 2013 cycle, is using it as the data engine for the Access web apps, but it got cut early on because it was clear that Power BI wasn't going to be ready for when we had to ship. So it's come a long, long ways.
And that was when I first saw it. I saw it during the 2013. Actually, I saw it during my first summit, my MVP summit. In 2013 was when I saw it, and it was in its infancy, didn't have the connectivity to Access, and but it showed a lot of potential, and I just haven't had an opportunity to use it since then. So I'm interested in that.
So I'm a little bit curious. I've got one current project, it looks like, that potentially might use this, but the charts are super simple. It's basically a complete web app. People are going to log in. They're going to enter maybe 10 values a month, and then they want to be able to compare those values over, month to month and against others in their kind of cohort. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to use the chart.js library to do it, because it really is just, show my line, show their line.
Sure.
But if on the management side, they start wondering, okay, there's more groups and things like that. You said there's a free tier. So I could author this on an account and then expose it to them on the website, because it's unclear to me how many users, and certainly for the everyday users, $10 a month to see 2-3 charts doesn't make any sense. But for the management side, do they all have to have accounts, or I guess I'm a little...
Yeah, so I've set up so you can, what I've done, and I'm probably violating terms of use, but for small projects, for initial deployment as a prototype and a demo, I create a pro account that's not named. So instead of having it tied to my email, I create in my Enterprise 360 account a Genentech demo at my domain, hvbi.net. And so then I can have multiple people. I've allocated one pro account at $9.99 a month to them. Now, multiple people can log on. There's no restriction on concurrent use or anything with the same account. And so just for the initial rollout for a very small group, I just create a dummy account that they can use. There's also, I haven't gone back to it recently, but they also used to have, you'd sign up for a free account, and they'd immediately offer you a 60-day Power BI Pro account for you to evaluate, and then you could extend that for another 60 days. And so that's another approach I've taken with new clients, that they just use the free version of Pro, the trial period of Pro, just to ensure that they're getting the value add that they're hoping for. But to do any real work other than just individual, sitting at your computer or being able to go to your account, you really need that Power BI Pro account. But again, compared to other tools, it's a fraction of the cost.
I remember during that first briefing they talked about being able to publish static reports that did not have the dynamic feature of hovering over and having this other stuff pop up, or clicking on it and having it do that. Is that functionality still there, that you could publish those to just anybody out on a web page?
Yeah.
Basically, you're creating a hard copy report and putting it on a PDF report and putting it out on the network is basically what you're doing.
Yeah, not so much that. So there are a couple things in there. So one, once you've built your report and it's up in the service, you can choose an option called Publish to Web, and so that Publish to, if I go back here, you can see I can publish to web, and when I publish this to web, that's the version that doesn't require a passcode or an account. You just send them a link, and anybody can get to it. That information's all in the public domain, so you don't want to put any confidential or proprietary information, but that's an easy way just to distribute to everybody and anybody. That's how I distributed my demo link, is just publish to web. The static piece, I don't know. It's always been dynamic. You can basically disable all the interactions, disable all the tooltips, disable everything, and in essence get a static version. But I'm not sure of a use case or a configuration that would be just publish a static version. You can export now to PDF, export now to PowerPoint, and distribute static versions that way. But in my use, it's always been fully dynamic depending on how you configure it. And in terms of change and updates, the Power BI desktop and the Power BI service, there's almost a monthly TikTok on updates. It's amazing every month the features that are being added to desktop and then making their way immediately or subsequently up into the service. It's just an amazing development cycle that the team has implemented. So new features are added every month.
Got it.
Well, I hope this was helpful.
It was definitely helpful for me. I need to do some more digging because I do have a couple of clients that could definitely take advantage of this functionality.
And you can see even simple charts, the type of information that's in a simple chart that you don't have in text. It's a great demo of that. And then also the other thing I have is just numerically how you can just use these data bars, or you can see you break out that information. Instead of 48 data points, you now have basically 3 data points in those trends. So again, visuals are, in my mind, are much more powerful than tabular or text data.